it's about taking risks. I think, look, waking up in the morning is taking a risk, but equally, like, not doing anything is taking a risk. So, yeah, there's a saying that I've got, and it's all of those who succeeded had to take a risk, but not all of those who have taken a risk have succeeded.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Driven Engineers podcast. This is where we dive into the stories behind the careers in motorsport and automotive engineering. We share tips and experiences for anybody looking to break into this exciting world. I'm Matt Honor, I'm your host, and today I'm joined by Dave Gabos, a composite laminator who's worked on the high performance parts that keep Formula One cars tearing up the track. He is a contract composite laminator, and some of his contracts have taken him across the UK and Europe, working for F1 teams as well as F1 suppliers. David's built a career fueled by his love for F1 and engineering, plus he's got his own YouTube channel where he shares cool insights about composites, the contracting world, and even stuff like navigating umbrella companies as well. David, it's awesome to have you on the show. Welcome.
First of all, thank you very much, Matt. I appreciate you inviting me on the pod. I've listened to quite a few of the episodes and I've enjoyed it. I think it's a very unique structure of the podcast that you got going with, inviting a wide variety of people from various industries, but mainly engineering and motorsport. And hello to the viewers as well. Thank you for joining us again.
Appreciate that. I gave you quite a small introduction, Dave, but I just like our guests to give themselves their own introduction. Perhaps you could tell the viewers who you are and what you do.
So, just to keep it fairly brief, I am Dave Gabos also. As I was explaining to Matt, I've got a little accent above the S, which you cannot find on the keyboard. So a lot of people, for a majority of my life, say Gabos, but that's absolutely fine. I'm originally from Slovakia, from Eastern Europe or Central Europe. A lot of people are not like me saying Eastern Europe, so we'll keep it there. And yeah, I've just got a lifelong passion of motorsport, cars, anything with, four wheels, to be honest, even two wheels, motorbikes, I love those as well. And yeah, I work in composites. I have for quite a few years now. I've been a contractor for quite a few years now, working abroad over in Europe, around the UK, Formula One teams, etc. And just huge, deep passion for motorsport, to be honest.
That's great. Love that. We're going to talk about your passion in a short while, Dave. You've described yourself as having that lifelong passion with Formula One and anything with an engine, really, like you mentioned, motorbikes as well. Talk us through, how did that passion start for you, and how did it kind of shape your early career choices?
So that's a good question, Matt. So originally, I remember the earliest memories I've got and the stories that I hear from my parents as well is when I was 2-3 years old. First talking, sat on a bus, and we were in Eastern Europe riding on public transport, and I would spot all sorts of performance cars, even ordinary cars that I get, nerdy and passionate about to this day, to be quite honest. I mean, I drive around in a Honda Jazz. I can get nerdy and passionate about any old vehicle. And I remember being on a bus and my parents saying that I used to spot out exactly what model and what make of the Skoda Octavia it was, what engine it had, and stuff like that. And I think that's when the passion first started. And the interesting thing is, I am the only person in my family who has passion really for motorsport and for cars, really. I think originally my dad in his younger years was into it and did used to actually take me to quite a few Max Power meets when I was a kid. So that's when I originally started with, he used to have a few, say, Ibiza Cupras and 1.8 turbo Skoda Octavias and stuff like that, with no door handles and stuff like typical Max Power stuff, faded headlights and the little, the little angry extensions they used to put on the headlights. They used to stick them on. So that sort of stuff well. In Eastern Europe, in Slovakia, that was when I first got into cars originally. But to be quite honest, my passion, you would know now, and as I am now, hasn't really kicked off up until I've got to the UK. Around the age of 12, when we moved with my family when I was quite young, that's when it really properly kicked off. And as you can imagine, being here in the Motorsport Valley, in the UK, the home of motorsport, the home of Formula One, really, it's really kicked it off. And also meeting the right group of people around me, and whether it's friends, whether it's teachers in school with a similar sort of passion, it really, it just helped grow that passion within me, that motorsport interest within me, basically.
That's good. So, is it fair to say then, living within the heart of motorsport kind of fueled it a little bit for you, living in around those Formula One teams, motorsport teams, in that kind of hub in the middle of the UK, really kind of inspired you?
Absolutely, mate. I think being in, really realistically, it's the Silicon Valley of motorsport, Oxfordshire and Warwickshire, this whole area. I think the people, even people that don't work within the motorsport industry, do understand how it operates and do have a lot of conversations, whether it's Formula One, whether it's British Touring Car and other series, and they do happen a lot more often, and people are a lot more interested in it. And in cars in general, like JDM, for example, Japanese domestic market. I've got a lot of friends and a lot of people that I've met over the years of my YouTube channel as well. I used to make car reviews and stuff like that from this whole area that I used to just go to all of these meets, events, car shows, whether it's racing, whether it's road car stuff, and yeah, that really helped to nurture that passion within me, if you know what I mean. Because over in Eastern Europe now it's completely different, but back then, I shall say Central Europe maybe. um, Back then wasn't anywhere near as advanced as it is now. There wasn't anywhere near as many meets, as many shows as there are now, with the obviously introduction of internet and social media and all of that. As you can imagine, that's massively grown over there as well. But back then, I was just mostly, as a kid, as you can imagine, just being taken to little events and shows. But being over here, the comparison I would actually make, this is very interesting. When I'm out in Europe, for example, a lot of countries like Germany, Czech Republic, Italy, ordinary people who don't really work within motorsport industry like Formula One, don't really know what composite lamination or stuff like that is. But here in the UK, even people that don't work within the industry, they understand a little bit more of what carbon fiber is and stuff like that, if you understand. So it's definitely, the area definitely does contribute.
That's really good. Brilliant. Thanks for sharing that. Really appreciate that. You studied A-level engineering at North Oxfordshire Academy, where you earned a distinction, and you focused on interpreting engineering drawings and manufacturing processes and some material work as well, metals, wood, PVC. But how did that education prepare you for your career now?
So first of all, I just want to say it all is about people and teachers. And whilst I'm not always the most complimentary about the education system around the world in general, to be honest, and I think it is slightly outdated and it doesn't cater towards specific traits and uniqueness of kids and people, and it is sometimes a little bit too focused on boxing people in and just giving them this specific one niche rather than supporting wide variety of skills and talents that people may have. When you find and have the right teacher and the right people around you, they really can help to nurture your talent. And I don't know if he's going to be watching this, but I want to give a shout out to Dave Murphy, by the way, who I'm still in contact with to this day. Used to be my engineering teacher at NOAA, and I believe now he's up in the management of the school now. But absolutely, he's definitely helped to nurture that passion within me. With all the conversations, even outside of the lessons that we had about Formula One, about cars, about modified road cars. We met up many times afterwards, many years as adults, obviously, going to car shows and stuff like that, and having those sort of relationships, having those sort of connections, having those sort of conversations with people. It definitely grows something within you, doesn't it? And yeah, I think when it comes to also working with my hands, obviously he's helped me massively when it comes to me understanding how these materials operate, how they work, how to work with tools. Because to be honest, before that, back in Slovakia, for example, I've never worked with hand tools. Obviously, being 10, 11, I've never quite got the hands-on experience. I've got the experience of watching my dad work on his cars and stuff, but I've never quite got the experience of doing it myself, basically. Yes, I think that aspect of things has hugely helped me in understanding that working with my hands is what I like doing. And despite me, which I'm sure we'll discuss, first going into IT, I eventually looped back to that in my mind and realizing that that's where my passion really lies.
Brilliant. Kind of a mentor then. That Dave Murphy was a bit of a mentor for you, somebody that really kind of helped you achieve your goals at an early stage.
Absolutely, yeah, greatly, greatly. Yeah. Obviously, I want to thank him, and I'm sure there's many other students who have the same experience, because I know a lot of the guys that went to NOAA and to sixth form as well, just like I did, who have only great stories to tell about him. And yeah, he's definitely not just me. He's helped many other students become passionate about engineering, passionate about cars, passionate about motorbikes or motorsport itself. Yeah, various other types of engineering as well. Don't get me wrong. There's some people I know that went to NOAA and the sixth form itself, like I did, who ended up in other types of engineering, mechanical and CNC machinists, etc. But just that those conversations really stick with you, and you really remember them. So anybody who's listening to this and is a teacher and or has a teacher, then who's helped them nurture that talent, or who's helped them get into the career path that they're in now, then yeah, be appreciative of that, because there's not that many people out there like that, and not every teacher is in their position and in their role to help the up and coming talents. Sometimes it is just a means to an end, and I think it's like that in a lot of the roles.
Brilliant. No, that's brilliant. Brilliant. You mentioned it briefly then that you did have a little bit of a career switch. You worked in F1 originally, but in an IT role. We want to talk about that switch. What kind of led you to that IT role, and how did you then decide actually it's the engineering side that I wanted to jump into?
So to be honest, alongside cars, I've always been, especially in my younger years, I've always been into like gaming, and as you can imagine, being a Gen Z, as they would say, or on the brink of that, me being in my mid-20s now, I've always been into that, growing up on PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, that kind of stuff. I've always wanted to operate within that as well, maybe in a certain way. But I just, being at quite a young age when I've gone into IT, maybe I would say it was a little bit of, I think we all have that, don't we? A little bit of confusion, not quite knowing what we want to do, but want to be in a certain industry. And when that opportunity of working for a Formula One team came up, I just grasped at the opportunity, to be honest. And I don't regret a single thing. I think it opened some doors, and equally, I think it showed me the inners of the motorsport, the inners of the F1. You know what I mean? Basically, that you don't normally see, the behind the scenes, rather, if you say, that you don't normally see on the TV. And yes, it wasn't the something that I wanted to do long term, and I've realised that after a couple of years of doing it, to be honest, because I've realised that sitting in an office behind a computer and doing, whether it's programming, whether it's server management, and anything like that, I don't think it was for me in the long run. But it took me a couple of years to realise that, and I think many people are like that. And sometimes you have to take a step back to take two steps forward, which I feel like is what I kind of ended up doing within Composite.
Brilliant. No, that's really good. And you're absolutely right about that behind the scenes piece, because you've got to have a certain work ethic and stamina to be able to work within that kind of environment, because of how high pressured it is, how full on it is. And yeah, it's great that you got that insight early, because when you went back into Formula One, you knew exactly what you were going to be ready for at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, look, don't get me wrong. It's a fast-paced industry. It's a fast-paced industry, and people can sometimes stress out a little bit. I can stress out a little bit as well, even though oftentimes I can come across quite chill. It's easy to get under a little bit of stress, and it's something that you got to get used to when you get into it. Because imagine if you're in the midst of the build season, for example, and all of a sudden, the season's still going, and the cars are still obviously racing on the track. A driver crashes the car, and then you're in the midst of a build season whilst also having to repair the current car, basically, so that the team can continue racing. And not enough people, for example, are on at the time because they're on holiday, maybe, or they haven't got enough staff at the time, etc. And it can be a little bit rushed. It can be a little bit like that, and it takes something getting used to. And working within different fields of composites, as I would say, Formula One differs hugely to working for a company that works with road cars or aerospace, in my opinion, to be honest. Because yes, whilst having these huge contracts under a company that works with, say, especially supercars and stuff like that, yes, it requires a huge precision. It requires precision, right? Because you want to make sure that the quality of the pads and the visual looks of the pads are as good as possible. When you're in Formula One, it kind of requires precision and speed as well. So it's something to get used to as well, I guess.
That's great. So you became a composite laminator. You've been there about 3 years now as a composite laminator in your role. What inspired you to start your own limited company and take on kind of contract roles rather than taking a permanent position? What's the pros and cons of both?
My first ever role, where I've trained up and where I was a junior laminator, and then sort of nurtured into an actual. Well, I gained my confidence, and when I think I've gained a lot of my skills, to be honest, because where I first started off, you do get thrown into a deep end, and yeah, maybe in that specific place you don't get as much of a support as you would first expect, which is a blessing and a curse. And I think it's a blessing for many reasons, such as, like I just said, gaining my confidence, and straight away after completing 18 months in my first role, I ended up taking a risk basically and jumping into a contract, my first ever contract, which was in Germany. Ended up spending a year out there, which I think there's multiple reasons for that. One of them is I just like taking risks. I like traveling. I like going to loads of different places, and I don't like necessarily being in one place for too long. Essentially, where I've got responsibility for myself, so I'm not necessarily under a certain structure, under certain like tunnel vision, being PAY necessarily. I like having the ownership of myself and having the responsibility of, if you're out abroad somewhere on a contract and you're there paid to be a skilled, high quality laminator, and you mess up and you make a lot of mistakes, the contract's gone. You have to really take your responsibility for every one of your actions. Equally, you do get quite a bit more freedom in often cases as a contractor. And yeah, sometimes, to be honest, I just I just don't like being in that mindset of just being a PAYE. To be honest, I like making my own decisions.
No, it's good. Perfect. I mean, you've had some great contracts. Can you share how you landed these opportunities, and what is it like kind of jumping between different companies and locations? How has that kind of impacted you?
So I think networking is a huge buzzword basically, and just putting yourself out there. To be honest, just sending your CVs around, talking to people on LinkedIn, talking to people in person in the industry, sending emails about it, just not being stressed or worried about it. Just have a conversation with people on the phone. The worst they can say is no. The worst they can literally say is no. So find the right agencies, find the right, maybe even in certain cases, to be honest, I even phoned up the directors of the companies that I was going to do a contract for in the countries that I ended up going to, and just had a direct chat with them straight away. Just, what I mean? All the cards on the table, just being honest, this is where we're at. I would like to go over there, experience the country, the local culture as well, and also help you out with what you're doing, And that's another reason why, to be honest, I think I ended up taking contracting, because I love traveling and I love experiencing different countries as well, just to add on to the previous questions. And it's a little bit different living in a country for 6 months up to a year than, just going on holiday for 2 weeks. And whilst I love the motorsport part of it as well, I also love the other aspect of it where you can get inundated within the local culture. And that also can come with some challenges, like having to learn a completely different way of living. Basically, when I was in Germany for the first time, and they've got something called gelbe Sack, which is yellow bag for recycling eggshells on its own, which is strange. They've got like 15 different types of bins for recycling and stuff like that, which I'm sure is great. But those can be challenges. Just getting used to a completely different train system, different language, obviously.
Yeah.
I don't speak a word of German, to be honest. I have been a little bit lazy when I was over there, because the company, again, shout out to them if they're watching. Still in contact with them to this day. Great people out there, and good luck to them, obviously, in the future. And yeah, for giving me that opportunity on the first contract, basically, when I was first out there in Germany, in that Stuttgart area, basically. Again, great part of the world, and brilliant experiencing that as well. But the challenges can be you having to jumping between the contracts and spending a certain amount, say a year here, 6 months there, 8 months there, 3 months here. You do have to adapt to meeting a lot of new people. You do have to adapt to interpreting different kinds of engineering drawings and different kinds of work. Some contracts you're going to be doing visual works for roadcasts. Some contracts you're going to be doing aerospace. Some contracts you're going to be doing Formula One and structural stuff. And equally, you have to get used to maybe being a people's person at times, And for people like me, to be honest, as much as it might come across sometimes that I am through my YouTube channel or even through here, maybe, I don't know. I'm an extrovert. I'm not. I am an introvert, to be honest. And it does take a little bit to get you out of your shell when you do stuff like that and throw yourself in the deep end and get out of your comfort zone, going between contracts rather than just being in one place for 3, 4, 5 years, So it's adaptation, it's being adaptable, it's being just taking the initiative, I guess, and just it's about taking risks. I think, look, waking up in the morning is taking a risk, but equally, like not doing anything is taking a risk. So, yeah, there's a saying that I've got, and it's all of those who succeeded had to take a risk, but not all of those who have taken a risk have succeeded. So I guess, it's 50-50. It's for us all to decide. And it does have challenges with it, but I love it personally. I love traveling Europe, maybe even outside of Europe eventually. You never know, there's contracts everywhere. And also meeting people. As much as I'm an introvert, I am also a people person, and I've met some amazing people along the way, by the way, in Germany, in Czech Republic, in other countries I've been to and worked with, in the UK, all sorts of. I'm still in contact with them to this day, and it goes hand in hand with, like I said, with networking, because we're all on good terms. We all have good relationship together, and the industry itself, the composite industry, it's quite small, and a lot of people know. One people knows another one, basically. Like it is a very small industry, and yeah. So in a roundabout way, that, but hopefully answers it.
That's brilliant. No, it really does. And interesting. I mean, I struggle with the UK bins and what bin I have to put out on the same day and what day, let alone having to have to battle with the eggshells as well or something on top. So they're cultures and things that you don't really think about when you're talking about new jobs and you're talking about working in different countries. You assume everything's the same, but culturally there's a lot of differences. The times that people eat, the times they take breaks, the working hours. There's a lot of things to take into account when considering those. So absolutely. That's a great insight. And
just to quickly add to that, just to quickly add to that, I understand I'm coming from a different point of view when it comes to this contracting. For example, in Europe, just to give a specific example, because I am European myself, I'm a Central European, do you know what I mean? And I understand the ways of the inner workings of countries a little bit more than, for example, I say the UK, because the UK is a very specific, unique country. Like having living here for more than half of my life, I understand that the UK is a very specific case. It's a very unique country, and a lot of the other European countries are a little bit more similar in terms of their culture and the way they operate than the UK. That's a completely different subject, So I understand that maybe for some British contractors or maybe even Americans coming to Europe in a way, it would be something completely different, experiencing that, I guess. So maybe I've got an advantage there when it comes to understanding the cultures a little bit more.
Almost certainly. Yeah, almost certainly. So let's talk about a typical day then. Talk us through what a normal day would look like for you. The moment you walk through the door of the Formula One team that you're currently contracting at, what does it look like?
So it's a long process. It's a lot of liaising. It's a lot of talking back and forth. It's a lot of meetings. And you probably imagine yourself, like Formula One is very different and unique in that, where there is a lot of talking involved each day, basically. It's a lot of back and forth. It's a lot of trial and error because of it being a pioneering industry. Not everything always goes smooth and seamless. So you do have a lot of designers coming down and you talking to them, interpreting drawings. Some drawings might not be quite right. A certain materials might not be fitting quite right. Then maybe you're trying to minimize the time it takes to do a certain pad. But to basically in shorthand. So you come in, you pick up you have a look at the schedule, you see what kind of jobs you're on. Usually, if you're in a Formula One team, you would be assigned a certain job that you pretty much would be on all week, because a lot of those pads are long pads. For example, if you're working on a chassis, if you're working on the floor, you usually have teams of people on various different shifts who are, on these pads, basically. So if you're if you've been assigned the privilege to work on the chassis, for example, which again a very important structural complex part, and you want to make sure everything is precise to a millimeter and perfect, you'd be on that all week because you already understand how it operates, and it would be, I guess, a waste of time putting a different person on it every single day if you understand what I'm saying. So you come in, you get all your tools, you interpret the drawing, you liaise with maybe the previous shift of where a certain, say, floor or a chassis or a rear wing is at. So that then instead of just reading their handover notes and the emails they've left, you can also just speak to them in person. They might be able to tell you little tips and tricks of how to bypass a certain issue or how to, make your work life a little bit easier, basically. You then get all of your materials, you prepare, maybe throw some of the cores in the ovens, get all of your tools you've got. Yeah, you crack on. Obviously, you've got usually a team of people that you work alongside, so you're not by yourself on the entire floor. You're working alongside 2-3 people all night pretty much, and you divide the workload. You have a little team meeting, for example. So you have your little cell meetings. So you have certain number of people in each group, and then you'd have a meeting together and discuss where roughly you're going to get with a job in the night, when you're going to need to use an autoclave, for example. So everything is there ready. So there's no time being wasted because, as we've mentioned, Formula One is a high pressure industry and the time is crucial. Time is of the essence, basically. And it's a very valuable asset, basically, time. So, yeah, you liaise with people. Some of us might go and do a little bit of trimming and preparing of inserts or the actual part we're working on itself. Some others will be preparing the materials, templates, cutouts. Not all of the kits are always laser cut. Some of them you're going to have to do by hand. And then it's also working with a lot of stuff, to be honest. If you've not worked in Formula One before, that you wouldn't work with before in other industries. Some really high Formula One grade materials, not just carbon, also inserts, cores, procedures and preparations of these inserts, like hydroblasting, for example, and things like that, which I've not done before, and using certain lasers, to precisely show on the mold where the ply of material goes down, which you would in other industries, because time isn't quite as maybe of the essence in certain cases, you would measure it by, your by hand, essentially. So there's various different procedures. And it's also very important that things are done once, but they're done properly. And, you don't have to spend 2-3 hours redoing it over and over again, basically. So it's also about, it's a fine balance of taking your time, but equally not taking too much time, but taking your time so that things are done once and they're done perfectly. And yeah, hopefully that answers some of that. I'm trying to.
Perfect. No, absolutely perfect. It's some good insights as to what it's like on the day to day. So thank you for that. You run a YouTube channel as well. It's your opportunity to do a little plug here if you wanted to, but just want to talk about that. I want to talk about what motivated you to start the YouTube channel, and maybe you could just tell some of our listeners and viewers what's some of the content and what you cover on a kind of from episode to episode.
So my YouTube channel is a very unique case. And by the way, again, I appreciate you mentioning my YouTube channel. If anybody wants to go and check it out, it's Dave Gabos on YouTube. I've got various different projects coming soon, and somebody who looks at my channel might think it's a little bit scattered and all over the place because, like I've just said previously earlier on the podcast, I don't like being boxed into one niche, and this society loves to box us into one niche and into one specific. You specialize in this, you specialize in that. I don't think it's hugely appreciated, even sometimes in a schooling system, when you have a wide range of skills and knowledge and things that you like to take part in. With my YouTube channel, I don't want to box myself into a specific niche. I like making topics about various different contents. I love debating with people. I love talking. I love conversating. One of my favorite parts is reading the comments, responding to comments, and also sharing just what I'm passionate about. I've made videos years ago on basically car reviews and car shows, car meets, and doing highly modified, 450 horsepower Honda Civics with a massive turbo slapped on them and driving those and having those experiences, which once again, shout out to everyone who allowed me to drive their car and have those experiences at such a young age, by the way, 4 or 5 years ago when I was 20, 21 years old. Not many people get those opportunities to drive high-powered, modified, really well-sorted cars. Equally, on top of that, I've made a lot of history content. I've made a lot of geography content, talking about Europe, talking about what it was like growing up in Central or Eastern Europe, as you might say, and growing up in a hobby blocks maybe but equally at the moment I've sort of transitioned the motorsport content into making Formula One content, and a little bit of behind the scenes, a little bit of what it's really like, a little bit of how to get into Formula One, and maybe help some future generations and some future passionate young engineers or aerodynamicists or even composite laminators into what to do and how to potentially get the opportunity to get into a Formula One team. But again, I'm once again switching up from that a little bit, and I'm currently working on another project, which I don't want to reveal too much just yet, but it's going to be a wide variety of people to debate with, wide variety of people from various different industries providing behind the scenes on what's going on around the world, to be honest. And as you probably, if you have seen my channel on some of the recent videos, in the past year, I've really been interested in economy, in politics, and what's going on around the world, and how that affects, in turn, also Formula One, motorsport industry, in turn, then composite laminators and trimmers and contractors and its industry. Wide variety of things that I love, to talk about, and come and have a look if you're interested in any of those topics I've mentioned.
Brilliant. Watch this space with the new project. That sounds really exciting, and looking forward to see what that entails. One of your videos recently, and we need to talk about it, but one of your videos recently discussed umbrella companies and its impact on the UK contracting market. You feel it's a good time to kind of highlight some issues, probably off the back of some of the issues we're having with our own UK government at the moment. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? Maybe just tell our listeners what the video was about, and just go over your thoughts again for us.
So I think in this unique time and space where we are in the world at the moment, in my opinion, a little bit of austerity coming in, and at the very end of capitalism, really, where inequality is growing and growing. Small businesses, takers, entrepreneurs are really being pushed out and not valued as much. For example, with the introduction of the whole inside IR35, which was brought in essentially so that certain contractors don't get tax advantages and don't let's be honest, don't tax evade, right? Which certain Formula One teams, for example, they're not honouring that, because it was brought into, let's say, if you're a contractor at, let's say, a Formula One team or an aerospace, or to be fair, anywhere, right? Any sort of composite field, composite, so it could be even road cars, and you work for a big manufacturer and you've been there for 12 months on a fixed term contract, but you're outside of IR35, you could probably do some, let's be quite honest, you could be smart with the way your fuel and all of these other things that you could put down for your tax, right? Not all of the industries at the moment are honouring that. So we're at the point in time where, as a contractor in this country, it's not as how valuable to be a contractor nowadays. You might as well, especially Formula One teams, to be honest. Hence why a lot of them are pushing towards permanent PAYE employment, because you get the same pay, you get the same taxes as a PAYE. However, you don't get any of the other benefits as sick pay, holiday pay, or anything else. So you're kind of being left out and kind of being squeezed out. And the government itself, I think, and the policies coming in and taxing small businesses, taxing entrepreneurs, taxing people who are willing to take the risk and take the initiative and not just follow the set out path, which maybe might be a little bit more safe in turn, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I've never said being a PAYE or anything like that is a bad thing. I think it's a good, safe thing to do, especially if you have a mortgage, if you have a family, etc. But I just feel like at the moment, being a little person, being the little guy, and not having any sort of backing and not any sort of word, you feel a little bit silenced as well, And yeah, I don't know. I just think entrepreneurship in this country and risk taking is no longer as valued, unless you're a big corporation, like, I don't want to mention any names, but a big corporation that will come and buy out 1,000 houses, and the policies will come in the policies such as, discussed property tax will come and really, in a way, push out the actual privateers, private people who own houses in this country because they're asset rich, not cash rich, meaning they're going to have to sell up to large corporations, which are going to overcharge people on. I don't like what's going on in the world, to be honest, and I feel like we need to talk about it a little bit more. And I'm not, by the way, I'm not a specialist on this topic. I'm not an economist myself. I'm not a politician myself, but I do really take a lot of interest in this, and I would love to know your opinion as well, to be honest, and any of the listeners' opinions as well in the comments if we can, because I think it's a topic that's important to discuss. And as as much as, for example, umbrella companies as well, like we've just discussed, it's I can't blame them. Like I said in the video itself, they've come in, they've taken the initiative, they've become the middleman between the contractors and essentially the Formula One team, for example, they're contracting. But not all of umbrella companies are working above the law. Some could have the bank accounts set up offshore, meaning they're not really contributing anything to this country, for example. However, they're profiting off of the people working in this country who are already being squeezed out by the inflation. And whilst it might look like the money's going up, really it's the inflation, because if the price of everything else is going up and the money's going up, does that make any sense what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think again, like you said, it's a topic that we could talk about for a little while longer. But just kind of if we're to kind of wrap it up a little bit for our listeners, just around the contracting piece, if somebody was looking to take a contract now in the UK, what tips would you give them in terms of how they should operate? Should they use an umbrella company? Should they try and use a limited company? What tips could you give them to try and help them navigate those processes?
So I think it all depends on what your current situation in life is. If you have a mortgage, if you have a family, and if you have somebody you need to support, maybe you are better off, to be honest, looking for a place that does offer inside IR35 fixed term contract, a long term contract that doesn't offer. Some of them do offer the stability and holiday pay, sick pay, but essentially at that point you are just a PAYE employee and you are treated like a PAYE employee and you don't get the same freedom. So there's pros and cons to everything. If you want more freedom, if you want to take more initiative, and if you want to be regarded as realistically a business to business relationship, and you have the ability to take more risks and take more chances, I would recommend outside IR35, meaning you have your own accountant, you do your own taxes, and you take care of your own business yourself rather than the umbrella company doing that for you. And like I said, by the way, just to that previous question, I don't want to necessarily disregard all the umbrella companies. Some of them are really good umbrella companies and some of them do a very good job. But like I said, there are also some downsides, like hand in hand, let's tie this to economy, for example. A lot of economists, the way they talk, a lot of politicians, the way they talk, they make it purposely very, very complex for an ordinary person to understand. And I think a lot of umbrella companies and the contracts themselves are very long and complex in order for people to discourage people from going through them, right? And from understanding what these little small charges and the little small, accumulated charges might be. And then what you've been told that you might be getting isn't what you're really getting in the end. And even if you look at, for example, for somebody looking at a fixed term contract, the yearly salary that you might get under that contract, or even the hourly rate, you might be losing quite a bit of that to some little accumulated charges and overall the umbrella company and the runnings of it, basically. So it all depends. If you're in a position where you are willing to take a risk, go outside IR35. And if you're in a position where you need safety and security, but you want just a little bit more freedom than being a PAYE, stick inside IR35. And my other advice would also be take a chance, take a risk. Go out. If you're in the UK, go out to Europe. Go and experience what it's like out there, working in different countries. And there's plenty of outside IR35 contracts there that you can take advantage of and explore the country. And also, at the same time, pick up a lot of new skills, because to tie to one of the previous questions, which we also had about what it might offer working abroad and working in different countries, is and working for a lot of different companies and contracting for a lot of different companies, is you pick up a lot of skill, a lot of different skill that being just in one place for, let's say, 5 years, you might not, because you work with so many different materials, so many different inserts, cores, people, designers, different various fields, aerospace, road cars, motorsport. And when you then come to a company or to a place or set up your own company, let's say, you then are able to implement all of that skill and information that you've learned and picked up from, for example, contracting in other countries.
Brilliant. That's really, really good advice. And there's a lot there that people could take on board, and really appreciate that. Going to try and wrap it up now, Dave. A couple more questions for you, though, and this is one that I always like to ask our guests, really. If you were just starting out, or I don't know, you've just recently graduated, or you're looking to maybe try and take the route of a hands-on role similar to composite laminating, what advice would you give to somebody who wants to go down that route?
So I think the easiest and probably the quickest way of getting into the industry itself is taking a step back, really, and going for a trainee junior position. Don't don't overstay in that position. You have to throw yourself into it fully, completely. Find a position. Yes, you won't be paid the most amount of money, and you might potentially be taking a step back when it comes to that. But spend 6 to 8 months maybe training up in that position, trying to take every single opportunity on the complex pads you've got there. And after that, a lot of doors do open up, and you might then be able to take steps further up in the industry. And like I said, it's trainee positions, junior positions, even in Formula One teams do occur and do come up quite often. So equally, don't get discouraged. If you apply to all of these Formula One teams, many times, to be honest, personally, I've been turned down many times in the past, whether that's because of experience, whether that's because it wasn't the right time of the year. Keep applying, keep putting pressure on them with your CVs, keep meeting, people like Matt, for example, who might be able to help you, keep talking to people, network around, create a LinkedIn profile, work on your CV. And whilst nowadays, unfortunately, the sad thing in the contracting industry, for example, and when it comes to employment as well, is that a lot of the CVs are checked through with AI, and it does lose a little bit of that personal touch, which is unfortunate. There still are a lot of great people out there who you can meet and talk to, and who might see that passion, that spark within you, and help to push you into the industry. So, yeah, I would say, whilst the society nowadays is pushing people to be very individualistic and focus just on themselves and making it themselves and succeeding themselves, it is very important to network as well and know people and have good relationships with people, because you will then help one another. You know what I mean? So I would say meet people. Don't be afraid of throwing yourself in there. Maybe even doing like let's say, a temporary internship, at these Formula One teams, for example. Like, do a temporary internship, which you might not be paid for, which you might be paid very little for, but it will open so many doors for you. And it's tough. It's tough because I understand if you're, for example, a university graduate and you want to come into the field, a lot of people at the same time apply. And nowadays, the market is very oversaturated and it's not easy at all. So even if you, for example, train up to be, let's say, aerodynamicist, and you've gone to university to be a designer and aerodynamicist, maybe sometimes it is worth, actually, especially in the case of designers, taking a step of doing like a junior or a trainee position in composites, so you actually understand the physical, practical side of things rather than the theory of how it works, basically. And that will then open a lot of doors. And yeah, I think, like I said, just don't be discouraged. Just keep pushing. Just keep pressing.
Really, really good advice, Dave. Dave, we're going to wrap it up there. Thanks so much again for all those insights. I mean, anybody listening, they're going to go away with one or two little bite-sized bits of information, key information for them to take away. So I just know our listeners are going to absolutely love listening to you talking about that. Good luck with the YouTube channel. Good luck with the new project when it comes. You'll have to keep us updated on that. Just a massive thank you for taking the time out to joining us.
Yeah, I hugely appreciate that. Once again, the invite onto the podcast. I hope that the viewers, like you said, could get something out of this. I know that sometimes I can go on a little bit of a ramble, and I do go on tangents, and I do the same on my YouTube channel as well, to be honest. Yeah, hopefully I was able to make some sort of clarity, and there is some sort of good information to pick out, nitpick out of that conversation. And as you mentioned with the new project, eventually maybe even get you on there, Matt. So it would be great to get to know you a little bit deeper. You're a very busy guy. I've been keeping an eye on what you do in the industry and on LinkedIn and all the events and things you go to. And it would be great to get to know you a little bit more personally outside of work as well, because important as to all of us listening to this podcast, work is and motorsport industry is, we have to remember that our personal lives are just as important, and our time is our most valuable asset. So we have to think about how we use it, and where we sell it.
Absolutely. And it all goes back to that networking thing that you mentioned. So keep our networks going, meet new people, connect with new people. So brilliant. Really appreciate that.